Welcome, viewers, to the Amenia Republican Committee YouTube program. Our mission here is to keep Amenia residents informed and engaged by sharing clear, timely updates from state, county, and local leaders. Today, we'll be joined by Assemblymember Anil A.J. Beephan to talk about rising utility costs that are hitting families across New York and the important conversation around bail reform and public safety that's happening locally and across our state. If I have read this correctly, New York has the sixth most expensive electricity prices for residential customers of any state in the U.S. mainland, and an increasingly strained power grid will require a 255% increase in transmission infrastructure between New York and New England to meet mandated clean energy requirements. Assemblymember Beephan has been speaking about these concerns and working on solutions in Albany, and he is with us here today. Welcome, AJ.
Thank you. And Jamie, let me say, I really like your background. It's almost like we coordinated this.
That's true. Well, I suppose we share a common love in that regard.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, what do you see as the main drivers of these rising utility costs in New York State right now?
So I'll go into twofold. I'll start high level, and then we'll delve a little bit deeper into it. So number one is that we just do not have the supply we once had here in the Hudson Valley. And a big part of that stems from the fact that former Governor Cuomo shut down Indian Point. And that took a great chunk of our supply away from the Hudson Valley and eventually moved it away, creating this area of a high demand zone. So we actually have an overlay over the Hudson Valley now that actually pays higher for electric supply than if you were to compare it to like Binghamton or other upstate areas, because we're just a pit for energy here. So that's point one. Point two is New York State policy. And I know the average person at home looking at their bill, they're like, how does policy even come into play here? Because all they see is supply and delivery. But that delivery cost, if you notice, 9 times out of 10, it's higher than your supply costs. Like, how can you have $150 in supply and $250 in delivery? That doesn't make sense to most. But within that delivery cost, there's a number of hidden fees. Of course, there's taxes, both state and federally, and things that has to be paid. But New York has implemented policies such as the CLCPA. And within the CLCPA, it has mandated investment in green and renewable infrastructure, which we're not saying is a bad thing. I mean, I think that we should be investing in that, but I don't think the end user of our utility should be footing that bill. That is built into the delivery costs. Another thing that's built in is mandatory payments to NYPA, the New York State Power Authority. A lot of that money is being collected and it sits in an open account. It's not really being used for the purpose that it was designated for. And beyond that, I think that it's kind of disingenuous that New York State isn't allowing residents to fully comprehend where all that money is going, which is why I actually just introduced a bill to shed some light specifically on the delivery charges part of it. I'd like to direct the New York State Commission and also the Public Service, Department of Public Service, to separate out those bills, show people where their money is going, what's going towards just basic utility upkeep and maintenance, what's going towards NYPA, what's going towards taxes and federal payments, and what's going towards New York's green energy laws, because I think that will really shed light for so many people.
Yeah, and probably light really helps clarify the issue. The average person probably doesn't understand the complexity of these issues, but they understand the impact. I'm curious, how do you see these issues impacting regular families and small businesses in towns like Amenia and communities like it?
Well, I mean, when folks once had electric bills that averaged out, say, about $185 a month, $200 range, and now they're seeing bills that are well into the $500 and $600 range. I mean, that's almost an expense that has tripled in less than 5 years. That's having a direct impact on your wallets. Not only for just basic upkeep and maintenance of your home, keeping your home warm, like heated, cooled, whatever it may be, but also that's less money that you have to go spend at local restaurants and shopping. I mean, even look at the numbers for like this year's county fair. Like it's lower than average. We haven't seen low numbers like that in since COVID times. I mean, and same thing with other major events going around the community. I just don't think people have that disposable income anymore because of things like higher utility prices.
And so we know there's an impact. You have some good ideas for bringing clarity to where these dollars are really going. Are there other actions you're pushing in Albany to bring relief to these ratepayers?
Yeah, well, I mean, for one, this is a long-term solution. We're very supportive of nuclear energy. We'd love to see another plant be built relatively close to the Hudson Valley area, not necessarily down in Buchanan. I mean, there were some serious like security risks involved there, but we have a lot of open area upstate New York. We should be looking at 10 years from now when that plant could be open and operational. That would be a tremendous benefit for us. But I also want to mention that there are other proposals out there by other lawmakers to address these concerns. But like, I really want folks to take a deep dive into the policy. I know that Amenia is covered by NYSEG, but a good chunk of my district is Central Hudson. And there's proposals out there to create a power authority to take over these local public utilities. And I can tell you that with great certainty, that's not going to solve our affordability problem. Yes, I understand billing issues happened with both companies at one point or another, but that was due to like system failures with software, not malicious intent. And that's being solved. It's been audited. Central Hudson had to pay a fine, but we're actually moving past that now to a point where it doesn't matter if it's a power authority running the utility or a private business. The costs are always going to be there so long as New York State does not change their energy policy, which is why we have so many proposals from both our side of the aisle and even folks across the aisle to start to dial those energy proposals back. If without doing that, we're not going to be able to make energy more affordable in our region, not even close.
So we fundamentally just don't have enough energy, produce enough energy. Our usage is too robust for the energy quantity that we produce. Are there things residents can do to advocate for the things that will lead to lower costs, or for those who just really are struggling to access assistance programs in our area?
Listen, if there's residents that's struggling to access assistance programs and you qualify for it, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to help connect you with those programs. You know, we're always supportive of those programs in existence because people really do need a helping hand from time to time, and it's important to ensure that your home is heated, cooled, and has electricity for basic living essentials. Another thing that they should do is reach out to your other representatives around the county. I mean, there's folks from Northern Dutchess, Eastern Dutchess that serve with me in the legislature that support a lot of these energy proposals that's happening. And whereas, I may be in the know, I'm against a lot of them, they're not. And they need to hear from you directly because their decisions are having a direct impact on your pockets, on your bills. Another thing, too, is when you go to vote and you flip over that ballot and you see these tremendous proposals on the back saying let's make New York more green, or let's make air more like cleaner, or something like that. You got to really read what those proposals are, because the CLCPA was actually passed and codified by residents of New York on a ballot proposition. And without that vote, this proposal would have never taken effect. Your bills would have been significantly lower. But because, New Yorkers like to see or think that, government's doing right by them, they voted for something thinking they're going to make their air cleaner and electric greener. But in fact, what they did was triple their electric bills. And then another point that you made about the supply and lack of energy here, I don't think folks really understand how close we were to having rolling brownouts during that peak high period of heat this summer. I actually took Superintendent Dwight Bonk up to Albany to meet with the independent systems operator. So they're a non-governmental group that runs the grid for New York. I purposely brought Dwight up there because he is the largest school district in our county that's not tied to a city. And he has the most buses that he would have to eventually convert to electric if all these proposals actually happen.
Wow.
So in conversations with the ISO, we uncovered the fact that because New York State has invested so much money into green technology, yes, there were great behind the meter solar helped during high peak usage times. But at night, when all that solar went away, our traditional energy generation couldn't keep up with it. Whether it was hydrogen, coal, whatever. Yes, we have coal still that we use. It could not keep up with the demand. And because of our investment in green and not enough investment into our traditional energy production, those plants were actually failing us. We lost 2 plants during that peak period. Like we had to actually bring in power from Ohio and from the the northeastern corridor down large transmission lines just to feed our local region. Otherwise, we would have seen brownouts. I mean, it's sad that we have the ability to produce energy here, not right in the Dover Amenia area and beyond, and we just don't take full advantage of it. So, while investment in green energy is good, I think we need to be smart and maintain investment in what's actually powering New York right now. And that is our hydrogen, our coal, our natural gas plants.
So the road to higher energy bills and brownouts is paved with good intentions. And if the average citizen wants to participate, first and foremost, really read what you're voting for, contact your elected officials. And if you're one of the households that's really struggling and does need assistance, there is help available, and you can contact the assembly member's office and they'll be happy to try and help you navigate some of that. That's my summary. Is that about right?
Yeah, I know I threw a lot at you, but it's important information for folks.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on, if we could, to bail reform and crime in New York. In 2019, New York State passed a bail reform law, which took effect in January of 2020. And amongst other things, it eliminated cash bail and pretrial detention for most misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies, and some would argue even for some violent felonies, in addition to changing discovery laws in a way that created an increased burden on prosecutors and prosecutors' offices. Many people believe that those reforms are the root cause of rising crime and safety concerns across the state, downstate, midstate, and upstate. And this has been one of the most debated topics in Albany for some time now. I know that you have been a strong voice on this issue. Can you talk to us about the current bail reform laws, how they work, and why they've become so controversial?
Yeah, so I mean, New York decided to be the leader in this bail reform and cashless program, as well as changing discovery laws. Unfortunately, while it's another bill or bills with good intentions, it definitely had some pretty sour outcomes. New York, and especially Albany, is bad at recognizing that they've done something quite detrimental and then backtracking to fix it. And change from that happens very slowly. So since the passage of cashless bail and discovery reform, it has completely upended how our prosecutors, even our public defenders and police departments, gather and share evidence. And it actually is, in a lot of ways, it was an unfunded mandate, because so many police agencies and DA and district attorney offices had to hire new staff just to keep up with those timelines. And I could tell you, just from reviewing audits that have happened, we still can't keep up with those timelines with sharing information. I understand the goal here was to keep people out of prison or jail or detention while awaiting trial. But I think what happened here is, especially because of how, in a lot of circumstances, charges are dropped down. We're seeing folks with repeat offenses and violent felonies being dropped down to misdemeanor charges, and they're just walking the streets free. I think another thing too is that judges are afraid, and it's either they're afraid and confused, or afraid to take incorrect action in following these new bail reform laws or cashless bail laws. So they're not sending bail when they potentially could be, or there's confusion regarding that, or they just flat out don't. And not that they're doing it maliciously. I just don't think that they feel like they have the law behind them like they once did to keep violent reoffenders in prison. Now, we have tried to change cashless bail every year since, whether it's a full repeal or changing small amendments to it. And there has been some small changes. But like, folks need to know that the people that passed cashless bail and advocated for it, they're still in the legislature with us. It's really hasn't been that long. The original bill sponsors are still there. In fact, when we supported a bipartisan proposal from the governor to amend cashless bail last year, and the bill sponsor went on a hunger strike until majority of it was dropped from the budget negotiations. And it's increasingly difficult to get support from both sides of the aisle to have some real common sense changes when it comes to this topic. It's something that we push for every year. It's something that to her credit, the governor does talk about quite a bit. But it's difficult when majority of the legislature sees this as a positive program by keeping folks out of prison. But this could spiral pretty rapidly, and we've seen that. We've seen police officers get badly hurt right in the town of Poughkeepsie by violent reoffenders who should be behind bars. We see what happened to the poor woman on the subway down in the Carolinas by someone who should have been behind bars, but this cashless bail, these policies are just not doing justice by our residents. So it's something that we're going to continue to push for, and hopefully, as the legislature makeup changes and new ideas and voices join our conferences, maybe there'll be some middle ground where folks realize that maybe we went a little bit too far here in New York.
And I assume it's fair to say you hear that from law enforcement, you hear that from residents in the district, that they feel this went too far, and perhaps it was well-intentioned, but it needs modification in order for all of us to live our lives and feel safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we hear it quite a bit, especially from our district and surrounding places up here in suburban New York City area. But, keep in mind, those are the voices of our residents that prioritize public safety and well-being. But majority of the legislature comes out of the 5 boroughs, and for them, they have different relationships with law enforcement. I for one, we trust our law enforcement, our district attorney's office. We trust that they have good intentions and they're doing right by us. Down there, they grew up with different life experiences, and they don't have that same level of trust. And because they have that majority voice, unfortunately, and with their residents backing them, they are hearing a different story than we are.
From your perspective, is changing the bail portion of these laws or the discovery portion of these laws, is one more important than the other? Are they equally important? Do they have to work in concert together in order to see things change?
So these were 2 very unique and independent bills, essentially, that they somewhat merged together. We didn't have to have discovery reform to change cashless bail, but they did it together for whatever reason. In my opinion, and I know the DAs might disagree with me, I think that discovery reform needs to be changed. I think that should definitely take a back burner to then fixing cashless bail policies, because I think our top priority is making sure folks that should not be out on the streets remain behind bars, especially throughout the court process. I think that if we are able to solve that and give our judges a little bit more leeway and backing so they feel confident enough to keep these people behind bars, then we can start to address, discovery reform and timelines. But I could say that, a lot of these agencies already hired the staff. They're already, close to adhering to those timelines. And while we should relax them a little bit, just because the process does take quite a bit in the criminal justice system. I definitely think cashless bail is the number one thing for us to address.
I had an interesting conversation with a judge recently who told me before cashless bail, he was able to say to a defendant who often had an addiction problem, I can offer you the opportunity to go to court-mandated treatment or to jail. And he said, now I say to a defendant, I can offer you the opportunity to go to court-mandated treatment or to walk out of here if you'd like. And he said, they're principally choose, I'll just walk out of here. And he was saying to me, it really deprives a defendant who may have addiction at the source of his crime from the opportunity to be forced to address something that could be positively life-changing for them. And he felt immensely frustrated by it. I guess I wonder what you think the likelihood is that we'll see legislative changes to that this year or any time in the relatively near future.
Yeah, just to touch on your point with early intervention, like when these folks are constantly being released and recommitting crimes, their rap sheet is growing, and it's growing rapidly. So by the time they do end up before a judge and get to sentencing, it's not like they're being indicted and convicted on one or two minor crimes. They've now built a rap sheet of 8, 9, 10 crimes, and they're going to state prison. It's a life that could have been saved in a way has been lost, and now you're doing 10 to 20 years at Greenhaven or Fishkill. So I think we're losing that early intervention part, both on the drug side, but just on petty crimes. And as for changes, we didn't have a whole lot of changes coming this year through the state budget process. Next year, there could be, it's an election year. I know the governor is up for election. She might want to push her tough on crime situation or platform. And we could see some minor changes there. But I can tell you when we did minor changes to bail reform last year, it was a battle. And it was not even a significant change. All it did was slightly amend the list of qualifying offenses for judges and just provide some minor clarification. And that alone held up the budget for weeks. I mean, we've had a late budget now for 3 years in a row. And that was a big portion of it. So, I would be supportive of any changes if and when that does happen, and we're going to continue to advocate for them. But, how optimistic am I? I can tell you it's kind of low at this point.
Okay. Well, hopefully the voters can advocate for change and advocate for finding a balance of fairness and public safety in our criminal justice system in a way that doesn't lead to what many feel and many have experienced as a more unsafe state since these reforms have gone into effect. AJ, thank you so much for being with us here today. I think that what we've talked about today really highlights how these statewide issues affect Amenia residents and people in Eastern Dutchess in a way that is really tangible, real, and we appreciate you working on these issues every day. I'd like to remind all the Amenia residents this program is about keeping you informed on the issues that affect your daily lives. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Share your questions and concerns in the comments section or by email so we can bring them to your elected officials in upcoming shows. AJ, again, thank you for being with us here today. Thanks for doing the work you do, and I hope to see you around Amenia and Dutchess County soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate you all inviting me here.